So this lecture is about 1099 versus W-2. So you may be already 1099, you may be W-2. This is just understanding some options. And then for those of you who are W-2 and you're thinking about transitioning or picking up some 1099 hours, some PRN time, or completely making the transition, we will go over that. My name is Katie Cooper. I am a CRNA in Tennessee. I've lectured for Summit before, so you may have seen me. And I currently am a 1099 employee or independent contractor. But I worked my first two jobs at two different facilities. One was a hospital-based facility that had an anesthesia medical group running it. And then I worked in Tennessee for an academic center that staffed surgery centers. So that's my background. I have navigated this, and I wish I had someone to kind of guide me through the process. There's some things I knew exactly what to do, and some things I had to ask a lot of people. So hopefully, this lecture will talk about the key differences between W-2 and 1099. If you don't know what that means, navigating how to transition, and also how does this affect CRNAs, and really we'll go over some salaries at the end as far as comparisons between the two. You may have some questions after that. Keep in mind, I know there's a little disclaimer on there. This one's kind of important. It's really for educational purposes only. You should have qualified professionals that you seek guidance from as well. So keep in mind that hold on. I don't know why it's not showing. Oh, there we go. I'm not a financial planner and I am not a lawyer. I know a lot of them in my family, but I am a 1099 CRNA and I have made the transition from W-2 to 1099. So there's pros, there's cons. We're going to talk about that today. And please feel free to put some questions in the chat. Becky will be monitoring that and I'll answer those at the end of the lecture. So also keep in mind, you can practice, there's already one typo. Okay, as a solo CRNA, both as W-2 or 1099. So in general, and this is a common misconception, they are just two ways of getting paid, two ways of how you get paid as a CRNA. It does not mean they are how you practice. So a lot of people will say, 1099 people are all independent and they're all solo practitioners. That's not true. Some people are W-2 and also practice independently. And also some people are 1099 and in an ACT, an anesthesia care team. And also keep in mind, neither are locums or travelers. So I hear that more so from nurse anesthesia residents who are saying, should I go locums to start or should I go 1099? I think what they're asking for is, should I practice as a solo CRNA or an independent CRNA out of school? So really, the most common misconception is 1099 does not equal solo. It does not equal independent contractor always. And W-2 does not mean you don't practice independently. So it's really how you are paid, how the company that you work for, or if you're an independent contractor, how you pay yourself, how you are paid. This was really interesting. Hopefully this link will work. But just a couple weeks ago in an email from the ANA, there was a link to work-life balance as a 1099 CRNA. And so if you click down here to read the full article, and I'll just kind of take you, hopefully it'll bring this up. It's a 10-minute read, so you can see it was released on the ANA. You can find it on the website if you can Google 1099 CRNAs from January 12th. So write that down if you want to fully look at this article. But it just talks about CRNA practice. It talks about how the schedule control, and it talks about some pros to being a 1099 CRNA. So I thought that was pretty cool, and you can find that on ANA from January 12th. It also came in an email on January 12th. All right, so just some overviews of W-2 CRNA. So again, many of you are W-2s and you want to transition. Some of you have already made the transition, but you just want to tweak a little bit of what you're doing or make sure you're doing it correctly. So as a CRNA that works or gets paid as W-2, you can be an employee of a hospital, a group, an anesthesia practice. The best part about being in W-2 CRNA is that the employer really handles everything else outside of how you practice. So you come to work, you get your paycheck, whether you're salary or hourly, overtime or not, but they pay your taxes. They cover malpractice insurance. It's often covered, I should say. You might want to consider getting supplemental malpractice insurance to cover yourself. Talk about that in a minute. And then they also, in general, cover your benefits, your health insurance. They contribute to your retirement fund, and they also pay PTO. That's a big deal. That's a pro as a W-2 CRNA. You might have a more predictable schedule, and you might have a more predictable income. What I mean by that is most W-2 CRNAs are salary employees. So every 2 weeks or every week or every month, however you get paid, it can be the same exact salary. You can guarantee it's coming in, and it might fluctuate up. It rarely fluctuates down. So it may fluctuate up because you work some overtime, or you picked up overnight shifts, or you worked a weekend shift, or you have a shift differential. In particular, maybe in December, your salary fluctuates way up because you're working a lot of overtime, as we do in our anesthesia OR schedule at the end of the year. So it's more straightforward. They withhold taxes for you, they offer the benefits, and they typically cover malpractice. And typically, sometimes the malpractice is a admitted company. This is important to know too. I did work for one group that they were self-insured. So within that medical center, they actually didn't contract with an insurance group, a malpractice insurance group. They were self-covered, which is interesting. So it means they have not coffers, but a bit of money that if any kind of malpractice lawsuit comes up, that bit of money gets paid out to those patients that need it. So they didn't have a typical insurance. I wish I had known that at the time. I think for myself, I would have definitely gotten supplemental insurance, something I didn't do. But it is smart to get supplemental insurance, even if any employer offers it, just so that you have some say in how the alleged lawsuit goes. You can choose your own attorney. You have power over that. So if you allow your employee to cover malpractice, and again, I'm not a lawyer. That being said, it is nice to have your own supplemental insurance. All right, so as far as an overview for a 1099 CRNA, many are considered independent contractors. So while the surgery center or the facility has a contracted employer group or a business that has that contract, then they will allow and they will hire 1099 CRNAs, typically paid at an hourly rate, sometimes at a salary rate too. Here are some of the differences with W-2. You have your own and you pay your own self-employment taxes. We'll break that down in a little bit. You pay your health, disability, and life insurance and other insurances that come up. You will pay into your retirement accounts. That can be a pro and a con. Pro is that you're able to max it out a little bit more than you would in a W-2 category. And then also, and con, you have to pay for it all yourself. You don't get that match. Malpractice insurance, I've seen 1099 contracts where the facility has an independent or a malpractice insurance for the facility, and all 1099 independent contractors are covered. But it's a question you want to ask every time you go to a facility as a 1099 CRNA. Do I cover my own malpractice, or do you? I would say in the contracts that I've seen, 8 out of 10, one out of every, I would say 8 out of 10, that most likely the 1099 CRNA is going to cover their own insurance. You also have to make sure about malpractice, which state you're in and how much you need. So there are some states that you need 200 for one occurrence and a max of $600,000. Typically, I work in Tennessee, and so we need that 1 million, 3 million. I suspect that in the future, you might see an increase in those numbers as far as minimal numbers of coverage, but we'll see if that happens. Some overview about 1099 too. You'll receive a higher hourly or daily pay, but remember there's no benefits. So you have to weigh the advantages of getting that higher hourly or daily pay, but also what are you going to take out of it? How much is going to go to taxes? How much is going to go and have to pay for your insurance? But you do have more control over your schedule and the locations that you go. As an independent contractor, technically, you are supposed to have full control over your schedule. You are supposed to tell the clinic or the hiring agency, I can work 2 weeks a month. I can work 2 days a month. I want to work 4 days a week. I don't want to work this week at all. There are sometimes that there are facilities who hire full-time 1099 staff, and they say you have control over your schedule, but you can only take 8 weeks off, or you have to work with those. So there are some full-time 1099 positions that where they, I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but sometimes they will have some say over how much time you can take off. That's a big question to ask too. Don't just go into a facility and you're the sole provider at a community access hospital and you're a 1099 employee and you need to cover your own weeks off. That's a big question too that I would ask. Typically, 1099 work means more autonomy and higher gross pay, but you do carry the business responsibilities yourself. All right, here are some of the pros of 1099 as a summary. So the benefits are included, your taxes are withheld automatically, you have less administrative burden, and if you're not super organized and you don't want to mess with the taxes and the insurance and the creating an LLC and everything, then W-2 is definitely a pro. Requires a bit less planning. Yes, you still have to choose your vacation weeks and get them approved and your PTO, but as far as mapping out your whole year, you may say, well, I know where I'm working next year and I know my vacation days and I know my typical schedule. Whereas a 1099 person has to go, month by month or week by week. Certain 1099 contractors will say, I need your availability 2 months ahead. I need your availability 30 days ahead of the next month. So everyone is a little bit different. It's more automatic. It happens automatic. You show up for work, you go home, you don't have to worry about everything else. There are some cons too. Typically, it's lower hourly pay, but remember, we're putting together our hourly pay, the benefits it includes, and so even though it's not an hourly pay benefit, the benefits that they provide for you, if you added all those up and then added it to your hourly pay divided by the hours you're working, may equal or be similar to 1099 hourly pay. You might have some less flexibility. So you may, you don't have control to say, I want to take off 4 months in a row. You may only have a certain amount of PTO, so less flexibility. Also less flexibility on the facilities that you work at potentially. You have more limited tax deductions. So you can't deduct your shoes and your iPhone and your office space and all of that, all of those deductions that we'll talk about in a minute. Sometimes the W-2 employees or W-2 CRNAs tend to work for more ACTs and tend somewhat to have scope of practice issues. That doesn't mean that always happens because there's certainly some CRNA-only facilities that hire independent CRNA only, but they hire them as W-2 employees. But within an ACT, I would say most employees are W-2. Not a ton of negotiating power. That's a big con. So again, back to benefits and schedule. You don't have as much power in that, and you might be limited to your locations. And what I mean by that is if there's a agency that hires people in different states, it may not be a W-2 situation. It may be more of an independent contractor so that you can get licensed in other states and also be able to work in certain facilities. I know 1099 CRNAs that either are their own pilot or they take private jets or shared private jets and they go work at for a month at a time certain places and come back. So you really have some choices out there as far as where you would like to work. As far as the pros and cons for 1099 CRNA, there's definitely a higher take-home potential, even considering all of the expenses that you'll incur. Flexible schedule, that is, I would say, one of the biggest benefits. You have more control over when you want to work or when you can work and not. I'm someone who typically has tried to be the best team player for our facilities. I'm one of the primary facilities at or primary providers at one of our clinics. And so that clinic is usually off for Christmas and New Year's Eve. And this past year they were open. And so guess who got to be the one that's covering all of those days? That's me. So yes, it's flexible, but you do have to be somewhat flexible in your own scheduling too. It's not like there are some jobs you could say, I only want to work 1 week a year. And that's okay. And they might be okay with that as well. You're able to deduct business expenses, so you can actually bring down your taxable income quite a bit with some of your business expenses. So any expenses you may incur, we'll talk about, and those can be deducted from your 1099 pay to bring down your taxes. You potentially have more autonomy. I will say many 1099 jobs are that solo, flexible, or not flexible, solo, more independent position. And as a 1099 independent contractor, you're actually supposed to, they're not supposed to tell you how to practice. They're not supposed to tell you when to show up. They're going to say, yeah, which days can you give me? Okay, this is our schedule that day, and that's what you're going to work. So. And of course, you do have that negotiating power as far as hourly rates and time off. Those are the two big ones. But you do have some cons in the 1099 world. You have to manage your own taxes with help, or if you know all about taxes, go for it. You have to manage your own benefits. That could be a big con or big turnoff for people who are thinking about 1099 work, is that if you're used to W-2 and you're used to having your own benefits or the benefits for your family, if you do not have a backup for that, or you're not willing to go on Marketplace or, consider a health share or really do your research about benefits, primarily for health insurance. Yes, malpractice is a cost too. That doesn't really fluctuate as much, keeps going up, but health insurance can be the big sticking point. And frankly, it can be terrifying too. Sometimes it's hard to make that decision and that transition solely because of health insurance. Because if you work for a big hospital group and they, within their system, they offer you health insurance and you don't have to pay out of pocket very much, it may be different as a 1099 employee. Now, if you have a spouse or a partner or someone who has health insurance, that can be super helpful. One big con is you don't have PTO and you don't have sick leave. So you do really have to remember that anytime you take off, you do not get paid. That is a big con. So if you have an emergency surgery, if you want to take off a month, you don't have that steady income that a W-2 CRNA has. Your income also, because of that, can also fluctuate. Cancellations can happen as well. So even though you say, all right, I want to work Monday through Friday, 4 weeks in a row, and then take off the next 4 weeks. And they say, okay, great. If you don't have in your contract that you are guaranteed that pay for those 4 weeks, you could work 2 weeks and they're going to say, oh, we're actually closed next week, or in the ice storm here in Tennessee this week, lots of cancellations happen. So having a contract is super important to make sure that you're covered for cancellations. There's some groups that are very stingy about their cancellation policies. It may be 24 hours before, it may be 2 weeks before, it may be 30 days before. Being as flexible with that is important. So having the knowledge that, all right, if I get canceled one day, no big deal. If I get canceled and I'm planning a 3-month contract somewhere, that could potentially be a big deal and affect your income greatly. So having a backup plan or having savings and expenses saved up is really smart. Con, higher tax bracket because you're making more money, but also you have more deductions. So that usually you're able to shift down quite a bit. Some of the 1099 cons are actually a limited location. So what I mean by that is, all right, I want to move to Atlanta, Georgia, and I want to be a 1099 CRNA. I get down there, I move in, and then I'm looking for a job, and I call all the facilities and all the anesthesia groups, and everybody says, nope, it's only W-2 down here. So do your research about where 1099 groups are available. Here, the current group that I work for is in Nashville, is actually started in Nashville by a CRNA, and I did not know they existed while I was a W-2 CRNA in Nashville. So sometimes it's limited locations, but you also don't even know about those locations. Word of mouth is a really big deal with 1099 CRNAs as well. Some of the bigger academic facilities will also offer tuition benefits. If you work there for a certain amount of years, they may cover, 50% of tuition at that university or other universities in the area. So as a 1099 employee, you would not have that, or independent contractor. Let's talk about taxes and just a couple of the different differences. Again, I am not a tax professional. You should seek advice from your tax professional, your CPA, and other professionals. But as far as W-2, you generally do not have any deductions. What they kind of balance that out with is you might get CE money, or you might get money to use for continuing education, for trips that you might take that are education-based trips. They might even say you can use up to $250 for medical devices, or maybe they would cover you buying your own stethoscope or buying a new pair of scrubs. It's rarer, it's more common to have CE or continuing education benefits, but just know that they don't always offer that. So no tax deductions as far as the expenses that you incur as a CRNA, your drive to work and your car that you use and all of that. The employer does pay half of your Social Security and Medicare, so that's important fact. And then they do those tax withholdings automatically based on how you fill out your forms. How many dependents you list, and if you're married and unmarried, filing jointly and separately, and all of that. As far as 1099 CRNAs, you can deduct a lot of expenses. Find a really great CPA, and many of them will allow certain types of deductions. If you don't find a CPA that is familiar with 1099 work in general, but also 1099 CRNA work, look around. They are out there. I'm not saying you can deduct every single thing, but there are categories that do meet the criteria. So if you have an LLC, you need a business meeting every year. You need an annual meeting, you need quarterly meetings. And so if you are going to a location or staying in a hotel, those expenses can generally be deducted as long as you are conducting business for your own 1099 business. CMEs or CEs, equipment, home offices. So, you can get a couple pairs of scrubs. You can get a McGrath. Laryngoscope is great, or a video laryngoscope if you want your own personal one. Part of your home can be deducted as a home office, so it's based on square footage and all of that. Sometimes it's not as worth it to do that. If you wanted your own office, like in a separate facility, all right, fine. But generally, that's a little bit of the gray area. You do pay a full amount of your self-employment taxes. So 15.3%. So this is self-employment taxes. This is not federal taxes like your normal income tax. So I had to write it down. 12.4% goes to Social Security, and Medicare 2.9%, which should add up to 15.3. So if you're W-2, the employer pays half of that. If you're 1099, you pay the full 15%, and that's a lot. You must file quarterly estimated taxes. So again, a tax professional can help you with that. As you're transitioning, I can't see the full screen, from W-2 to 1099, what are some of the things that you'll need to do? So setting up a business entity, generally LLC, sometimes PLLC, that's a professional limited liability corporation. An S Corp can be beneficial for taxes as well. Consult your tax professional. You're going to want to open a business bank or a business bank account. It is best to separate your personal expenses versus your business expenses. So having a bank account that's a business account, that's your anesthesia business account. The LLC has to be an anesthesia business. And then also having a credit card. And here's where you can actually it's a nice benefit to opening your own business is having that business credit card and racking up some mileage, or racking up, Chase points that can be used for other things, or getting cash back. So all business expenses should go on a business credit card or business debit card if you just want to deal with a bank account. Remember getting malpractice insurance if not provided, and really paying attention to the hours that you work as a 1099 CRNA. So say you're W-2, but you want to do just some PRN shifts as 1099. You get all these benefits. Keep in mind that you can do both. You can be a W-2 CRNA and then pick up a couple shifts, and then you still have to do all this stuff for the business, but you do have that benefit. So maybe you want to keep your W-2 job for health benefits, but you also want to have some deductions and work 2 days a month as W-2. That is great. That's a nice balance, especially if you're in transition and you don't really want to know if you want to jump ship from W-2. That's important. So, but with malpractice insurance, there's different kinds that are offered, and there are different groups out there, of course. I have my malpractice insurance through ANA. They're A+, they're admitted. They kind of check all my boxes. And I fluctuate between a moonlighting policy and a full-time policy. Some years I've worked between 500 and 1,000 hours as a 1099 employee, more so when I was doing less W-2 things, and sometimes I'm over. But keep in mind that malpractice insurance, if you're looking at moonlighting, so this is important, if you're just looking at moonlighting as a 1099 CRNA, it is the anesthesia hours. It's not 7 to 3 every day. So it's not 8 hours of work. It is the actual time that you provide anesthesia. So the start time of anesthesia to the end time of anesthesia. So if you only do one case and you go home at noon, but you're really on the clock until 3, it's just that anesthesia time that the malpractice insurance has to cover. Okay. You have to arrange your own health and disability insurance. Disability insurance is a real big deal. If you're a young schnapper out there, a newer CRNA, get the younger you are, the more disability you can afford, and that it will be a lower cost to you, and the less health issues that you have. So if you try to get disability insurance, if you're almost 50 like me, then it's super important that every little item that you have had and happen in your life medically will be discoverable, and you will have riders. So riders mean that they won't cover certain injuries or medical expenses related to that disability. So for instance, I had a hamstring repair. That was another time that I didn't had to plan for 8 weeks off, or almost 8 weeks off of being a CRNA and getting that paycheck. It's important to that a disability I had like a 3-month waiting period, so that's very common. So I didn't get that disability money either. But also know that, like, if I wanted to change my disability insurance in the future, and they said, "All right, what surgeries have you had?" There would be 100 most not 100%, most companies would say everything except for your hamstring would be covered. So they'll put those riders in there. Health insurance, that's a whole topic in itself. But, in Tennessee, Farm Bureau is a great agency. You may not have it in your state. The marketplace may be an option for you. A health share may be an option for you. And if you're covering your family, that's something to consider, the cost of that. And there's various amounts of costs. Putting in your retirement savings, max out that retirement if you're 1099 as much as you can. So the extra you're making, that can really benefit from you. The earlier you put money into retirement, the more it grows. I'm sure you know that. You're setting aside approximately quarterly 25 to 30% of your income for taxes. Remember, that's based on the hourly income that you bring in, or the monthly income that you bring in. Every quarter, you should be putting that aside. But then at the end of the year, you can say, all right, I'm going to deduct this and this and this and this. We're going to bring down that income quite a bit. So it may not end up being 30% of your taxes with all your deductions, but that's what you should put aside. And don't forget that self-employment taxes on you. Working with a CPA who's experienced with CRNAs and independent contractors is great. And then there's also tons of resources out there. There's businesses that offer a whole seminar on becoming a 1099 CRNA. And of course, there's Facebook groups even. There's even, groups within that are just based on like free answers to all of your questions as a 1099 CRNA. Don't be afraid to ask. Ooh, hello, hello. There we go. There were a couple things that just brought up. I think this was from last October. So this is also on AANA, and it is what 1099 CRNAs and nurse anesthesiologists need to know about taxes. So this is a great resource too. Just get it started. It's actually a CPA who started a company that really focuses on CRNAs who need tax preparation and tax help. So not a bad article to get into. If we have time, I'll pop it up on the screen a little bit later. So as you're transitioning, what do you need? You need yourself, you need your skills. A lot of times, this crosses a little bit more into locums, but a lot of times as a 1099 employee, they want to hire you because you are the jack of all trades. You're not limited in your skills. You haven't limited yourself this whole time. But there are 1099 groups out there and clinics and facilities that, listen, if you've been limited in an ACT, for instance, in the past, they're willing to train you and they're willing to take you on as long as you're open to it. Or they might send you to a block course or something like that. You need your CPA and financial planner. You need to establish an LLC or PLLC, depending on the state. And you need a business license and insurance for your business. And insurance is for you, disability and health and malpractice. You need an EIN number. That's free to get, actually. We'll go over that. A bank, a business credit card, in that order. So the first thing you need to do is do that EIN number so that you can establish a bank account and get a business credit card. How do you find the best health insurance as a 1099 CRNA? This has been my experience, is that I have used almost everything. I've used a marketplace plan. Then I had my hamstring surgery and had to be swapped out of that plan. I've used a health share for a healthy family or a healthy single person. A health share, if you don't know what this is it's not actually insurance. It's a group of people who have come together and they pay monthly, typically at a much lower rate than health insurance is. And then there's this pool of money. And if you have anything happen to you or you need to have a baby, or you need surgery, or you just have regular, you get the flu, that pool of money gets distributed, but you almost have to apply to use the pool of money. So be cautious about those health shares. Even if you wanted to have a supplemental health insurance program and the health shares covering your higher expenses, but it's really somewhat, and they've been in the news too. Some health shares get overwhelmed with the amount of requests, and so they are able, or they are allowed, to deny you of any claim that you might send to them. So just be aware of that. ANA offers some insurance out there. I actually have not used the ANA health insurance that they offer. It's it's almost like a mini marketplace within it. There's private brokers. This is another thing that on 1099 CRNA Facebook groups, they tend to, pipe up. Some of them are allowed to have not just CRNAs in the group, but brokers as well. A high deductible health plan, if you're healthy, you want tax savings, and having that health savings account, that's a nice way to pay for expenses that you can occur. And then consider disability and life insurance to protect your income. You also can be self-insured. I know several CRNAs who are self-insured, so they may have in a money market fund $500,000, and they say, I think that's going to be enough if I have a big major surgery, or small surgery, small something orthopedic, and I need to take some time off. They might be self-insured. Yeah, just make sure you weigh, that's risk. It can be risky. That's all. And then make sure you reeval annually. A lot of times, some of the marketplace plans and some of the brokerage plans, the US health groups out there will say, okay, you used a little bit too much, so we're going to have you switch plans or get a new plan this year. How can you find a CPA? Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt,
Yeah.
but someone just asked, you said about self-employment tax a few minutes
Mm-hmm.
ago,
Mm-hmm.
and they said, is the self-employment tax included in the 25 to 30% of taxes or in addition to? So can you
Okay.
clarify that comment?
Sure. So your state income tax and your federal income tax are just that. So when I say 25%, that's generally your state and federal income taxes. Your Social Security and your Medicare tax is what makes up that 15% of self-employment tax. Whereas if you're W-2, you pay half of it, and if you're 1099, you pay the full amount. So no, it is not included in that amount. I'm going to double check on that because now I'm second guessing myself. But that's a really good question. I'm going to write and I'm going to
No,
discover.
that's accurate. That's accurate
Okay.
because think about our paychecks, and one of
Hmm.
the deductions out of our paychecks is Social Security. And one of the benefits of being W-2 is your work pays half of it for you, right?
Right.
But if you're self-employed, you're responsible.
Yes, that's actually, yeah, it clued me
Hmm.
into. And also it's up
Hmm.
to, I think this past year it was the first $164,000 you made. So
Yeah,
some of
there's
you
like a
will,
cap on it. Yeah,
right. Some of you
yeah.
will notice, like if you make 250 a year in September, you may notice, oh, your paycheck goes up 15%. Like, why is that? Or half of that, I should say, if you're W-2. Like, why is that? It's because you've hit that limit. So thank you for that question. Good. Okay, finding a CPA, you're going to look for someone with experience. Ask them if they've taken care of independent contractors. That's like the buzzword, right? And or 1099. But also, do they know anything about PLCs, about CRNAs in general? You can ask other CRNAs who they use. That's important. So most people have a very good CPA. They don't necessarily want to share them, but they can definitely refer you to someone to help you get started. And then some people don't just pay quarterly, they may pay monthly, or they may keep that quarterly amount of that 25 to 30% in an account separately and then just pay annually at the end. So they may say, like, I want to keep all my money until the end of the year, or until taxes are due, I should say. That's okay. There is a state society of CPAs out there. Sometimes in your state, Tennessee is not really one of them, but they will add, I am familiar with, or they'll have, like, I want to filter it by the CPA society. You can filter it by independent contractors, 1099 people. And then sometimes you just have to switch CPAs. We've switched CPAs twice, just because we knew we could get better deductions, and some CPAs are more cautious, more, what's the word? Anyway, a little bit more cautious about those deductions. You want to keep those expenses separate. So don't forget using that business credit card or business account, keeping receipts for deductions as well. So you'll hear some CRNAs that say, well, as long as everything is on the business credit card, you're good. But if you ever get audited and they say, oh, you went out to a restaurant, was that really a business expense? They might want to see that receipt. And also keep good records of if you do, go on vacation and you're doing CEs and or you're having your business meeting in Hawaii. They're going to want to see that, like, you actually did business at that time. Keep records. All right, working with a financial planner. They're legally required to act in your best interest. There are CFP credentials out there, so those are kind of like the stamp of approval. Are they the best? Maybe, but at least they're credentialed with that CFP credentialing. You want to ask about their experience, same as we did with the CPA. And then also they can offer very great guidance as far as retirement planning and tax strategies. So really, when you have the control, you have to control it. You have the control over your money and your income, but you really have to control where it's going and use it the best for you. There's some that are just fee onlys. Fee only advisors are those that are they're supposed to give unbiased advice kind of in a general way. And then there's some that you might pay a 1% fee to manage your money. You also might be very good at managing your own money too. Super important for 1099 employees or contractors, sorry, is having that emergency fund. Most people will say 3 to 6 months. Why? For cancellations of contracts within the guidelines of your contract. So you get canceled in 30 days and you're like, oh, for a 6-month contract. And you say, huh, I didn't expect that. Can I pick it up somewhere else? There is a plethora of work right now, I will say, as a 1099 contractor, but you somewhat have to be willing to move around a little bit or go to an area you might not be as familiar. If you have a family, that's a little bit difficult, or can be difficult to do. You want to track your income expenses. You can use QuickBooks, you can use Wave, Gusto. There's other accounting software out there. You want to make sure that you're holding on, or that you're remembering and keeping track of your allowable expenses. So all the licenses you pay, your ANA dues, your CMEs. The one thing, somewhat of the things that you don't want to pay pre-tax money on is your disability insurance. There's some certain CPAs out there that will say that, like, that it won't be as effective in the future. Again, that's more of a professional question for them, as far as which should you pay your disability insurance out of that, because it can be taxed later on. So say you do a disability claim, if you pay it with pre-tax money and then you get $5,000 a month in disability pay, if you're on disability, that money can be taxed. If you pay it post-tax, it won't be taxed. Okay. Sometimes you just can set it and forget it. I like to say about my quarterly taxes. So I just take it out. I don't even look at it. I don't want to see it. But I like to see a little refund at the end of the year. You plan for paid time off. Super important. You don't get paid any time off that you take. So just know that, your salary, your monthly paychecks and your weekly paychecks can definitely fluctuate based on the amount of time that you take off. Okay. Getting an EIN number, it is free to apply for it. So be cautious about Googling, how do I get an EIN number? You're going to get 12 different companies that will charge you to do it for you. This is a free service that the IRS, and it's instant online approval. Or instant within 24 hours, I should say. Sometimes it takes a little bit of time, especially for the business. But if you know that you need one, you can do it yourself. You do not have to pay someone else. So, like, cautious about using the LegalZooms and the online services that say, like, oh, we'll take care of everything for you. Well, you can also do it yourself, and it's free. Helps to keep your Social Security private. So why we get an EIN number or a business number is so that business, mine is Cooper Anesthesia. It's very unique. Cooper Anesthesia. And so that EIN number, that's how I file my taxes for my business. And then, of course, I take, a paycheck out of that. We'll get there. One EIN number per business entity. So with anesthesia work, you should just have one, but you might also have other businesses out there. So my teaching business, my CE business, that's all on a different EIN. How can you start an LLC? You want to go on your own state's Secretary of State website, choose a unique business name. I will say use caution when you're using anything that says anesthesia or anesthesiology or surgery. Sometimes there are unique rules that apply to that. So you can say anesthesia, some states will say you can say anesthesia services or just anesthesia, but you can't say anesthesiology. It's weird. Some states are very unique. So just like having a personal license plate, you want to pick a name that is flexible, or you want to have some backups ready. Pay your filing fee, create an operating agreement. I will say to make an initial one, using AI is not a bad idea. And then you want it reviewed, by someone who's familiar with business entities. Renew annually as required. And then it also requires personal and business liability. So I have personal liability and business within my LLC. The business liability is usually like a general liability. It's a very low cost amount compared to malpractice insurance. So just make sure your personal liability is your malpractice, and your business just covers your own within business. Okay. So let's compare. This is good timing. Let's compare. And so I really honestly like not made up these numbers, but I took some numbers that I've seen out there in the world lately. And so they may not equal what you are making. And I know that. So I just had to create a number out there. So this is just an example. It's not, this is exactly how it's going to be, but there's two examples. So we'll do first one. So we're going to take a W-2 CRNA. Their salary is $200,000, which turns out to be about $96 an hour if you work full-time. So full-time, 40 hours a week, 52 hours a year, or 52 weeks a year is 2,080 hours. Your taxes are withheld. Again, the employer pays half that Social Security tax, no deductions. You have that benefit potentially of health insurance, and maybe they match your 401k, and maybe I'm using a low number here, but it could be worth $8,000. Your PTO is included, so even if you take time off, you're going to get paid your salary. So with all those benefits included, so these are just the two that I included, the 12,000, the 8, in net effective value, 220,000 versus a 1099 CRNA. So we're going to up that income, right? Because as a 1099 CRNA, you should be making more money hourly than a W-2 CRNA because you don't have those benefits. So let's say you do work full-time as a 1099 independent contractor. You're going to take 8 weeks off a year and this income is about 156 hours. So minus the 8 weeks that you're not working. So this income includes taking 8 weeks off. Okay. So I think that turns out, I think I have it on the next page as far as how many, hold on, let me go forward. I want to tell you how many hours that is. 1760. So 1760 hours of work compared to 2080. You're going to pay a full 15.3% on the first 168,000. You're going to pay federal tax after deductions, and you're going to pay your state income tax. You're going to buy your own health insurance, varies from being a single person to having a family, varies on which insurance you choose. And it really is up to you. I know a lot of people that have a high deductible, low monthly cost, low premium, high deductible plan because they're healthy and they know they have that savings, that emergency fund ready in case they need it. I see more people doing that than pretty much anything. But if you know or you have medical conditions that you need a lower deductible because you're going to meet it every year, then you'll have to weigh that monthly or that premium monthly cost. You're going to save for retirement, which is self-funded. No one's going to match it for you. And then you're going to pay your own malpractice insurance. I will say of the reports out there, this can also vary wildly, whether you're doing sub 500 hours moonlighting, up to 1,000 hours moonlighting, or a full-time policy as a 1099 CRNA. It also depends on what state you work in. So just make sure that if you're working in multiple states as a traveler or locums, that you'll have to have, that each state will your business is where you're going to pay your malpractice insurance. So your home state is where it should be based out of. But if a lot of times the malpractice insurance, they're going to ask, are you only working in the state of Tennessee or other states as well? So that can drive up your costs. Keep in mind too, each state malpractice insurance is different. So say you go to ANA, you say, I want a quote for Tennessee, and then you're like, oops, we're moving to Alaska. I want a quote for Alaska. They could be, even if you say full-time policy, they could be very different numbers. Each state varies wildly. Some are 15,000, some are 2,000 so for the same exact policy, depending on what state you live in and work in. You don't get any PTO, so unpaid time off reduces your annual income, but your net effective value is similar, 220 to 240 or so. So while your 1099 income looks higher at $75,000 higher, you're like, woohoo. But once you subtract the taxes and the benefits, the gap can narrow. You do gain flexibility of control. So just a side-by-side comparison of the two. So your net cash, your total net value, your hours worked 1760 or 2080, your true hourly rate, so that's minus all the taxes and everything on the right-hand side, and then your time off, limited potentially. So you might have 8 weeks off as well as that W-2. I didn't put in the exact time off because it's already PTO. So it is what it is. You get the PTO time, you can take off exactly what they tell you to take off as far as how many weeks. Some people have 5 weeks, some people have 8 weeks or more as a W-2. All right. Second little comparison here. W-2 making $250 a year. Salary, 120 hours based on full time. Taxes withheld. Employer pays half of Social Security and Medicaid. That's that 15.3%. You have health insurance. You have a 401k match. It's a little higher for that 401k match because you're making more money. Malpractice is covered and your PTO is included. So your net effective value, including benefits, $285. Great. Ooh, let's take a 1099 CRNA though. $220 an hour is a salary of 400 grand. Just gonna throw that out there. And I know there's plenty of 1099 CRNAs who are laughing at me right now and saying, I make way more than that. I only cover emergency contracts where they're going to pay me 300 and I don't take a penny less. And that's okay. Those jobs are out there. This is just an example. So $220 an hour for about 8 weeks off. So remember, you don't get paid for those 8 weeks off. You pay your full self-employment tax. So just as a calculation, that's $61,000 up to $164,000. So for the first $164,000, pay your own health insurance, malpractice insurance, retirement savings, no PTO, but your net effective value, ooh la la, 322 to 345, depending on the insurance quotes. Mostly that's the biggest fluctuation in it. So let's compare. Oh, and so this illustrates that the higher income levels, the more hourly rate you make as a 1099 CRNA, the advantage grows compared to the W-2 employees. But you have to weigh that income with the benefits that are not included in that salary. You may not want to mess with it, and that's okay too. So again, this is just a side-by-side comparison of the net cash that you receive, the time off, and then your true hourly rate deducting all of the taxes and insurances that you're required to pay for. So it is significant. The higher you make as a 1099 CRNA, the more significant it is. So what's best for you? You may want stability. You may want benefits to be included and you don't want to mess with anything to deal with the business. You stay W-2 and you're happy employer and employee and happy employer probably. But you might want to consider flexibility, a higher earning potential, some more autonomy potentially. You may be ready to jump the ship, or you may be ready to incorporate some 1099 work in with your W-2 work too, because some CRNAs combine both. And that's kind of that sweet spot. So if you're unsure and you don't want to make that big jump, if you do a few 1099 shifts and you're able to create that business and get those deductions, the tax benefits of working some PRN 1099 work as in addition to your core job. So maybe you're like, some people work like the 0.08 schedule. So like you work 4 out of 5 days instead of like 5 eighths, you work 4 eighths. I think that's 0.8 or so. So you may have that as your W-2 job. You get all the benefits, or even some jobs will say, all right, full-time benefits are included if you work 30 hours as a W-2 employee. So no, there is some flexibility in that as well. So you get your benefits, you work 30 hours W-2, and then you're able to pick up a couple shifts 1099 and get those benefits too. This is not an endorsement for anything out there, but there are other resources as far as the 1099 Success Academy. There's a Facebook group for that. There's some social media forums that are free to just ask your colleagues. And then recently, the ANA also developed a 1099 CRNA Institute, where it is a couple week long program. It's on demand, and you watch the videos and you can learn even more that you've learned today. So in closing, we'll take some questions, but really W-2 is about stability, and all the extras, all that extra work out there is handled by your employer. And then 1099, you might have some more independence, but it does require some business knowledge or someone who can help you develop that business tax planning and all of that. If you're considering transitioning, just make sure that you're considering everything before you transition. So you don't have to create, get other health insurance and get other, your business set up. You might want to take a couple weeks or months off, but that's when you can work on your business license and your EIN and everything. But it really depends on how much risk you're willing to take, how much flexibility you have in your family or in your life, and your financial goals too. So some people just go straight into 1099 because they know that their financial goals are to retire at 50 and they're going to get there. Or because we can work a little later as CRNAs, they're just going to have, more set up in retirement, and they may max out their retirement from day one. They stay in the same house. They don't take any risks as far as that goes, and they're able to achieve their full goals. And that's really it. I'm going to go back to that screen or that slide that I showed that was recently released by the AANA, and I'm going to take some questions as well. Let me just pull that up.
One question that came through was, what exactly does doing your own billing mean? When a faculty asks, and then she put in parentheses, wherein a CRNA is doing 1099 tours of duty.
What does doing your own billing mean if you're a 1099 CRNA? Okay,
Yes.
that's a really good question. That's a whole nother lecture too. Just before I answer that, I'm going to throw up. So there's tax and financial considerations. That is from June 4th of last year. So if you're writing that down and you want to look up all of that, that is available for you. Okay. So in my experience, I have never done my own billing, but I know enough to know a little. And so what doing your own billing means is you go to as a 1099 CRNA, you're going to go to a facility. Let's take a plastics facility because that seems to be the more commonly used doing your own billing. You're going to go approach the plastic surgeon and you're going to say, hey, I want to take over anesthesia services. I want to do my own billing instead of getting an hourly rate from said surgeon. GI clinics are a little bit more famous for that too. And so what you're going to do, plastics is actually not a great thing. So, because a lot of that is cash based. So you're going to develop, okay, I want to get paid $1,000 for every breast augmentation I do. And that's what you're going to charge the patient. You are going to bill the patient yourself. Let's take a GI clinic where there's a lot of Medicare, there's a lot of different insurances involved. If you do your own billing, that means you take on the billing responsibilities. So you are the one as a 1099 CRNA getting their demographics and their insurance information. Then you or someone else, very preferred, a billing company will have that responsibility of calling or making sure that the billing, that they bill insurance for the patient. So if you're doing your own billing, the facility is not billing the patient, you and your business is billing the patient. So often what I hear about is that you go to a GI clinic and you say, I'm going to do my own billing. I know you used to pay $100 an hour to these CRNAs, but no, I'm going to take over your billing. They don't like that usually because they tend to bill a lot higher than the hourly rate. That's an opinion out there, but it does take a while to get the billing rate back to you or to get the payments back. Insurance can be very tricky to work with. So they may say, I'm going to pay 80% of this bill, or you're going to ask me for this and I'm going to only pay this. And then it takes them 3 or 6 months to pay the bill as well. So for insurance wise, if you're doing your own billing, it has been suggested that you're going to want to make sure that you have enough money to cover you and or your employees, because as a 1099 CRNA, if you have a contract yourself, you can also hire other 1099 CRNAs and either pay them individually hourly, or you can bill and everybody gets a share. So doing your own billing is really to do with insurance. It's really, you can do your own billing, as a W-2 CRNA too, but as a 1099er, it can have its advantages because you get the full amount from the patient versus just an hourly rate. So many facilities won't share that information as far as what their bill, what they've billed, like say, all right, I want to see all your bills. I want to see what you brought in for anesthesia services last year. They're a bit tight-lipped about that because a lot of facilities will make a decent amount of money, and then you're like, oh, but you only paid your CRNA 200,000 over last year, and you brought in 500,000, or I'm making up these numbers, but doing
Yeah.
your own billing is really for insurance purposes for each patient, and you have to have it. It is helpful to have a billing company take care of that yourself, unless you have
We do have an
schedule of fees too. That's another thing too. Yeah.
we do have a lecture by Matt Zender called Business of Anesthesia, and he talks a lot about billing. The downfall to billing is there's no guarantee in what you're actually going to get paid. Each health insurance company is different, and there's also a delay. So you're not
The
going to
delay.
get that like pay on Friday, right? You're going to do the procedure today, and you might not get paid for it for 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to really know what you're doing, right, Katie, when you get
Yeah.
into billing.
Yeah. And you take
Yeah.
on that liability too. Like you may
Yes.
have, I know what I
Yeah.
got.
You don't want to do something wrong and end up with like Medicare fraud charges or something
Hmm.
crazy because they don't mess around. Not to
Yeah.
say you can't do it. You just need to be really knowledgeable.
Yeah.
Katie,
And
there are
honestly,
a bunch of
uh,
questions in the chat window if you're able to see it, or I can
oh,
read
sure.
them to you if you'd like.
Okay. Yeah, I'll go down. Yeah, the thing with billing companies too is sometimes they'll charge like 6 to 12% of the whole of what they bring in. So it helps them if they're bringing in those as well. Okay. Are you able to explain taxable income after deductions? Okay, sure. And so say you make, I'm just going to make it easy. Say you make 100 grand as a 1099 employee and your business expenses, your insurance, your health insurance, your clothes, your car, your home office, that costs 40 grand. I'm just making up these numbers. So instead of paying taxes at the federal level and the state income taxes at 100 grand, you're paying taxes on 60 grand. So bringing down your taxable income is preferential and is a huge benefit for 1099 CRNAs. It is an important perk. Yes. So you're going to
Mhm,
pay less taxes because you're being taxed on less income. Okay.
mhm.
Perfect. There is, oh yeah, someone asked where the slides are available. There's a PDF in the chat, and then you'll also get a link in an email that you'll get with your evaluation that you have to do in the next 24 hours. Okay. If an LLC is registered in one state and the CRNA relocates to a different state, how is that handled? I have never had that experience before. That is a very good question that I'd be happy to look into.
Anybody on the line done that? Have they had any issues with
Yeah.
their LLC going to a different state?
A lot of
Feel
times it's
free
where the
to
business is
chime in.
located. So if they're paying the business, um, say I go to Kentucky and I work in Kentucky, but they're paying the business that is located in Tennessee, do you have to pay? There's no state income tax in Tennessee, so a lot of people will do that. They'll come to Tennessee because there's no, or they live in Tennessee.
Mm,
So yeah, you might only have to pay like the Tennessee. Well, there's no state income tax, but the state that you have the business in. Okay. Oh, yes. There'll be a recording, yes, on Summit Anesthesia seminars. You will load that in
so
like
I'll
your
load it to our
on
YouTube.
demand. Hmm.
Yeah, I'll put it on YouTube
Oh,
for a week, the unedited version. And then we'll take it down and we'll edit it and put it in our bank for purchase after that.
yeah. I'm gonna answer, I don't know the number, so I'm looking it up as far as like max retirement contributions. I see that.
Oh, so someone's saying about how much can you do? Is there a higher max with 1099? So I was actually, this is a good lead in for me. So I was
Mhm.
actually looking, we do these every month, and I was trying to think of cool things to do and different topics. And one of the things was some financial questions, because a lot of times I find, and Katie, I know we've agreed about this before, when you're in anesthesia school, nobody teaches you this financial stuff. And you like
Mm-mm.
triple your income, and then nobody teaches you like wealth management, right? So I just met with a different, like a business financial advisor versus a personal one. And one of the perks of having an LLC, now it depends on the type of LLC. I will tell you, I own an LLC for Summit that is sole proprietor.
Mhm.
With sole proprietor, at least, you can do what's called a SEP account. A
Mhm.
SEP account, I believe you can put 60,000 a year in,
Mhm.
and it comes dollar for dollar off your taxable income. That's in addition to your 401k. That's in addition to, um, I'm trying to think what else you could put in, say a college fund or,
Yeah, 529s. Yeah.
529s, things like that.
Yeah, it's up to in
So those are
2025, the SEP was 70,000 or 25% of your compensation, whichever was less. So
That's right,
70,000.
70 or 25. So say
70,000.
you made 200,000, it's whatever is, um, I believe the lower amount. So if your quarter percent would be more than 70, then
Mhm.
you can only put 70,000 in. But it comes off dollar for dollar. So you make 300,000, 70 comes off your taxable income immediately. That money goes into the SEP. It is treated like a retirement account. So, if you withdraw it early, you're going to pay interest. But if you keep it in there till, I believe it's 59 and a half, then you
Mhm.
just pay taxes when you pull the money out. You don't pay any penalty interest. That's
Mhm.
something you would not be able to do with a W 2. So, right
Mhm.
there, if you're making a significant amount of money, it's a nice way to kind of protect your assets and cut down your tax burden. But if you get a business financial advisor, and that's what I was going to say, is I'm thinking about bringing one of them in, and we'll do a big financial disclosure at the beginning. Listen, they're not trying to sell you products. They don't want you to be their customer. If you want to be, that's fine, but that's not the purpose of it. But I actually want them to come on and show you. They do like a slide that has buckets, and it shows you in these buckets, like you should be putting this much here, this much here. It tells you how to have some taxable, some non-taxable for your retirement, and where to put those funds and where benefits are for each. And I think that's an important thing. And like Katie said, you got to have the right accountant as well. And
Yeah.
it's best for your business accountant and your business financial advisor to actually have a conversation,
Mhm.
because one can come up with an idea that completely screws up what your accountant was doing for
Mhm.
you and has to change how they what's the way it word I want to say, when you have an LLC, there's different ways you can file. Like you can start as a sole proprietor and turn into an S corp. It's all tax stuff, and it
They're going to
has to do
make
with
it
tax
the best for you
laws.
based on that year. Yeah.
Correct. But those two need to have a
Yeah.
conversation, or one can kind of screw you over because they
Yeah.
didn't talk to the other.
Yeah, a lot
So,
of times, like we have a group that has lawyers that reviews contracts, and a financial planner and a CPA, and they're all in one. Like those are great. They're really like
yes,
financial management service groups, so that they
yes,
have all of it, and you have their text, and you text, how much more do I need to put in? I'm gonna
yes.
go
And you
over.
want to
Yeah, go
talk
ahead.
to them, say biannually, because you may say, look, this year was better than anticipated, or this year wasn't great. What do we need to adjust for the next 3 months or 6 months? And you may put a little less in this or a little more over here, and they'll
Mhm.
help you. Or you have a burden, like Katie said, or like myself, I had a medical issue and I was off for months.
Mhm.
Um, so you may say, hey, I want to stop contributing to maxing this out, and I want to put more here, or I need to pull from this, or you have to be able to have that kind of conversation. And that's the hard part, is just finding the right fit for that person. But once you do, it's a game changer.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Someone asked me about can you just go over the anesthesia start and stop time again? So especially with moonlighting, say you say like, I think I'm only going to work whatever amount of hours of days a year. And so the malpractice insurance, how you figure out moonlighting hours. So whether you qualify for 500 hours or 1,000 hours of moonlighting, so not a full-time policy, is you add up, and it's kind of hard to predict, of course, like, I had a moonlighting policy because when I started 1099, it was only for 2 months for the rest of the year. And so I did only up to 500 hours, but actually I was like getting close to that 500 hours of in the facility time. So malpractice insurance is covering the anesthesia anesthesia time. So you pick up your patient in the pre-op room at 7 o'clock and you finish at 8 o'clock. That's 1 hour, but you're there 7 to 12, let's say, and you only do that 1 hour. That 1 hour is what goes to that 500 hours or $1,000 hours of
So
moonlighting.
it's so it aligns with like your billable time, basically.
Your billable time. That's a great way to say it. Yes. For malpractice insurance, it's your billable time. So when you're considering that, I liked Betty's story about billing and her 5% and why shouldn't be solo. I like that. Thank you. Great idea. Michelle out there said SEP accounts can be 25%. So depending on if you're full-time, 1099, a solo 401k would be the way to go. Yes, you can do both. Yeah, but you have to balance it out. Exactly. Retirement, I think we covered that. The number fluctuates. Yes. Oh, if someone said if they're doing, where did it go? Oh, how much can you deduct? So if you're moonlighting as 1099, but you have your W-2 job and 1099 is just for fun, you can't deduct more than you make. So if you make 50 grand, you can go up to, you can't deduct more than you bring in, if that makes sense. I have had one year where that was the same year when I started 1099 that my deductions were higher because I was starting a business and I was, paying moonlighting and that it was almost deducting everything. So my taxable income from my 1099 work was almost nothing. It's great. Okay. Am I missing any questions out there? Kept a database. Oh yes, database with anesthesia start and finish time and keep track. If you have a facility or if you do like electronic anesthesia records, that company, like we use Graphium. I know there's other electronic medical records out there, EMRs. They will know your anesthesia billing time too. So you can say like, all right, 3 months in, what is my anesthesia billing time? Is it gonna be more than 1,000 hours for the rest of the year? And those malpractice insurance companies are very good about I unless something comes up, I'm not sure that they can ask you for that billing time, but I would never want you to be covered less for the anesthesia time that you work. So don't just do a moonlighting policy and then work 2,000 hours. Like that would be bad if something came up because you wouldn't be covered for that whole time. Okay. Anything else? I think that's it. That was kind of what I just said. If you're moonlighting and you go up, you go over your 500 hours of billable time, you can add you can adjust it, prorate it for the rest of the year. ANA did that for me one year because I definitely went above 500, but I stayed under 1,000. So I just prorated for that time. Once I hit that 500 hours, the rest of the year was prorated. Liability, let's look at the side. Yes. Yeah, you're still liable. Liability is another topic, but yeah, as a solo or in an ACT, you are liable. So yes, you should have your own malpractice insurance because of that. Because guess who they're going to protect the most? Okay. Anything else? I think that's it. Don't forget, you're going
I
to fill
think
out your
that's
evaluation within 24 hours. You're going to join us. When's the next one, Becky? You're going to put up some slides, I think.
oh, I knew you were just going to tell me that. Yeah,
Okay.
it's oh crap, you put me in the spot. It is in the slide deck. I'm going to run a slide deck here in a minute. I
You're
know we
welcome.
did back-to-back weeks and I apologize for that. I don't like to do that either, but
Blame me.
um we have to do it when, I'm available and the speaker's available. So we have a break until the end of March. Um so March 29th, we're doing pediatric ENT.
Cool.
In April, we are doing cardiac risk mitigation. That's very fancy, but basically the he's discussing things that are risky at induction. What cardiac situations are a problem when you do like a general, and how do we mitigate that risk? So that's kind of a cool one. May, we are doing drug to drug interactions and how we try to avoid any issues there. And then June and July, I'm booking now. I'll keep those under wraps till I actually have the date. But I have a bunch of really cool topics coming up. I'm trying to think outside the box. And I'm actually thinking of putting together, and I believe I'm going to, I just have to figure out when, put together some another like live virtual conference in the spring. I'm thinking April-ish. I just have to see if the dates align. Maybe do like a Friday, Saturday, Sunday where we'll go on live and we can get a bunch of credits in. Um,
You have a cruise next year? That's next year? Cruise?
and we have a cruise next March, so March 2027.
Fun.
But in the meantime, we'll keep doing the virtual stuff. I have a lot of personal stuff going on in 2026, so I got to kind of keep it close to home. So you'll see me a lot on camera, not in person. I'm sorry for that, but family first, right? So we got to take care of that. I am here for you if you need anything. Don't be afraid to. Oh, the cruise. I will put it up. It's on the Icon of the Seas.
Ooh, that's a big ship.
It's a
That's
yeah, it's a beautiful, beautiful trip. We're
it's
going to the
on
Bahamas.
it's on the
Let me
calendar of
see.
events on Summit
It is on the
Anesthesia
calendar of
Seminar.
events. I'm trying to pull up the actual cruise for you, but I'll have it up. The slide reel is going to run for a moment. There's a barcode, and you can look right on our website. It's the largest ship in the world, so I think it's going to be an awesome trip. I'm really looking forward to it.
March
So
6th
I'll
to
put that
13th.
up. You got the evaluation. Yeah, March 6th. It's a week-long cruise. So it should be awesome. And we're only doing 2 days in person on the cruise. I've decided only to do the lectures on the days we are actually at sea. That way you're
Woo!
not
That's
like
awesome.
running back on the boat and trying to get to the meetings. We'll get all the courses in on our sale dates. I'm going to put the PDF up again for you in the chat, and the link for the evaluation I also put in there. And you get it. You got an email that just came 15 minutes ago with the evaluation link. Some of your emails seem to be blocking it. It's coming from RSVP-AFI. If you're using a .eu, Hotmail, Yahoo, some of the older email systems will block it. So I just dropped it in the chat for you. Click on that link. It is only open for 24 hours. So you want to click that link. I'm going to put my little slide reel up, and I'll leave it run for at least 5 minutes so you have time to get to that link in the chat. I know we're going over, so I don't want to keep chatting your ear off. Thank you so much, Katie. You're amazing. You always do such a great job.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
This has been a Summit Anesthesia Seminars CE production. Thank you for supporting our CRNA-owned company. We appreciate your trust and commitment to continued learning.